All right. Well, welcome everybody. Recording's on. We're ready to go. Rock and roll. Excellent. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I am Cedro Thorell with Utah Manufacturers Association, and we are joined today with two folks from Factory Arts here. So we've got Richard and we've got Chad, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, but we're going to take a tour of their factory today, and they're going to show you how they build what they build and why they choose to do that right here in the state of Utah. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for joining us. Richard, why don't you tell us who you are and what it is that you do?
My name's Richard Baird again, and Historical Arts is the company, and we manufacture architectural metal work. So specializing in cast components, but we do all types of ornamental things like railings, light fixtures, entranceways, anything that you can imagine that would be metal, we do that.
Yeah, and in the video we're about to watch, we get to see some really cool examples of things that you've done, some historic places that you guys have worked on.
And as for the name, Historical Arts and Casting, most of our work is turn of the century metal work. So that's what we specialize, even though we do a lot of modern and contemporary metal.
But if somebody has something old or wants something older looking,
Correct.
they come to you.
Yeah.
Chad,
Yep.
go ahead.
So my name's Chad Thorell. I also work at Historical Arts and Casting, involved in the financial aspects of the company. Been there about 28 years, and it's been fun to watch the company grow. When I started, there were about 13 employees, and we were up
What are you up
about
to?
35 now.
35.
So
That's awesome.
it's been fun to be involved in lots of different projects. Like Richard mentioned, over the years, we design and build all different types of custom metal work. We will see in the video, we'll see that we have a full design and engineering department. We have a pattern shop to build the patterns. We have our own foundry, do all the fabrication, painting and finishing in-house, and we'll even send crews out to do installation work. So it's kind of a turnkey process from start to finish.
Wow, that's amazing. And the people that are the crews that go out to do the work, are they also full-time employees doing other things when they're not installing, or are they always busy installing?
No, the way we try to plan it is that the crews that build the projects in the shop go out and do the installation so that they're most familiar with the project. And if any challenges arise in the field, they're the best capable to solve them.
Nice. Okay, so well, welcome everybody. Before we dive in, just so you know how this works, this is meant to be a live factory tour. So pre-COVID, Utah Manufacturers Association would go to factories and we'd invite a bunch of people to come, whoever wanted to see the factory, and we'd walk around the factory and talk and see everything. And then with COVID, we realized, we can't do that. People weren't having guests in their factories. A lot of factories were shutting down temporarily. So we started doing these virtual tours. And the great thing about the virtual tour is now we can have a lot more people. In the old days, you'd have 10 people touring the factory, 12 people, and half of them couldn't hear what was going on. It was noisy, nobody knows. This allows a lot more people to join. So this is a live event. Please type in the chat window if you have questions, and we will pause the tour and answer those questions. So you have a unique opportunity to interview these guys, ask them whatever you want to know about their business, and get advice on how to run your business or just things that you're curious about. So feel free to type in the window any questions. And McKinley, our fearless DJ over there, she's going to be monitoring those as well, and she'll ask the questions as they come in for us. So let's go ahead and dive into the video here.
People come to us because there's a unique need that doesn't exist, that they just can't buy off the shelf. And the drive to meet that need is more important than compromising to something that's readily available. That's why they come to us.
Because we have everything in-house from our.
All right, hold on. I forgot that when I was watching this earlier, folks, I was going at double speed. And I don't know about you guys, but I like double speed because, I can
Get twice as much done.
get twice as much done. But if I don't want you guys to sound too incredibly strange. We're going to make that go regular speed here. So let's give that a go.
And installation, so it's kind of a full package.
So we have complete design, foundry process from molding, all the different types of casting from lost wax to more modern and technical stuff as permanent mold casting we do here.
I mean, you see just the stuff is, all of it's lasts forever, and you just get to see it's aging with the bronze because it's kind of alive. You've seen some other stuff that's 100, 200, 300 years old, and you're like, wow, that stuff probably will be still there.
My name is Chad Thorell, and welcome to Historical Arts and Casting.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming out. Our company designs and builds all different types of custom architectural metalwork. We had an agreement with the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and did a lot of his interior metalwork and designs. That was a wonderful project several years ago. Currently, we're doing lots of railing systems and light fixtures and full building facades. We work primarily with cast iron, aluminum, or bronze, just depending on what the client's looking for and the properties of those metals. They each have different pros and cons. But what we'd like to do today is just kind of go on a tour through the facility. We'll walk through it as if we were a project, so we'll start in the drafting and design department.
Excellent.
Then we'll move to the pattern shop. From there we'll head to the foundry, fabrication, finishing, and we even offer installation services if people need that.
Wonderful. I understand you've got two different types of processes, so maybe you can show us an example of that.
Sure. So we've got a little bit of demonstration stuff here that we used to take out on trade shows when we would travel. And like I mentioned, we have a foundry, and two of the primary foundry processes are lost wax or investment casting. It's used primarily for sculpture, where you would start with a clay sculpture, and then you would make a rubber mold of that and end up with a negative inside the rubber mold. And then you'd pour the wax down there and end up with a positive of the wax. Then you would take that wax and invest it in a ceramic slurry that would coat the entire wax, duplicate of the sculpture. And then the fun part starts, where you would heat the metal up. Now, bronze pours at about 15 or 1600 degrees. Then you would pour the bronze down through the cups, and it would flow out through the gates and risers and take the actual shape of the sculpture that was made.
So now
That's
we're
a lot of
starting to
steps.
see what it looks like.
And then,
get
yeah,
that
if you
done.
clean that all up.
It's
and-
impressive.
And put It a does patina take a on lot it of and end end up up with with a a finished final sculpture. product.
Beautiful.
Sure.
Now, this piece is from one of my favorite projects. It was a fountain that we did for the governor's mansion in Annapolis, Maryland. And there was a design contest that we won, and we can see photos of that upstairs, and then we've actually recast a portion of that fountain that's in our conference room. So you can play Where's Waldo and try and find the frog
We'll
in
find
the
him.
fountain. So the second type of foundry work that is more what we focus on is sand casting, where you use it for architectural elements like railings and light fixtures. And you would make a wood pattern or plastic pattern or even a metal match plate pattern if you were creating thousands of pieces. But then you would pack the sand around the pattern and be able to release the pattern, and it would create a vacancy for the metal that you're going to pour in there.
What holds the sand together?
So the sand has a chemical binder that gets mixed in through a big mixing machine. It's kind of like industrial glue, and the sand gets very hard, and then you pour the metal in, and it takes the shape of whatever's inside the sand mold. The sand will stay in the mold shape. But as you can see, if you were to zoom in on this, you can kind of see the sand texture. Now you can use different grits of sand to achieve different textures. We like to use a really fine facing sand to keep it as smooth as possible. You can see where the gates were cut off of that, and you can see that it had a core that was built inside, so you would have a wall thickness instead of a solid casting. Then after that, if you cast multiple pieces, that's an interesting thing about the pattern work,
is you have to be able to release the patterns from the sand. So if you're building it, you have to build separate patterns for pieces so they can be individually released. If you see that was attached on there and there was sand.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. We were in there, right? Everything
Yeah.
kind of has to be one directional, doesn't it?
Yeah, so they actually build the patterns, and they put a something on them called draft. So it has a slight angle that's barely perceivable so that it does release from the sand.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting.
And it's really interesting to work with the pattern workers and
Everything that was above.
and
it.
have meetings about how are we going to break this up into manageable size pieces and what patterns are we going to use.
So you have to build separate pieces. Then hopefully,
Now you've got to put it back together though.
right. when
It's
we
a
put
lot
it
of, it's a lot
together-
of thought and work that goes into every single one of those,
Yeah.
those pieces, right? Otherwise it's not coming back together.
We're able to do it in a seamless manner where you can weld it, you can attach it mechanically, but in the end, after you grind out the welds and clean up and sharpen the corners,
Beautiful.
hopefully you can't tell that it was multiple pieces. It's kind of a seamless integration. And then the final step would be to apply different patinas. You can, on bronze, you can get a range of colors. You can get greens, reds, browns, oranges, by using different chemicals. We're upstairs now in the design. and
So a
engineering-
patina is a rust. How do you, once you've, changed the color of it, how do you keep it from continuing to decay? How do you make this, because this stuff lasts forever, or does the patina protect it actually in the future?
Well, a patina actually, bronze has a living finish. It always changes.
Yeah.
But trying to maintain a set color, often we will wax it.
Okay.
And as long as it's in a dry environment, indoors or something, it will stay the same. If it's out in the weather, it continues to oxidize, and the wax just slows that oxidation
Slows it
down.
down. Does that
Or it
affect-
can be lacquered or something else, but typically we specialize, most of our finishes are what we call a living finish.
you
It
expect it
continually
to
changes.
change?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that's part of the beauty of bronze. And one thing that's different about bronze being a non-ferrous metal, not containing iron, like steel, steel will rust and the rust will continue to corrode through the metal. Whereas the bronze will create this beautiful patina. And like you mentioned, Cedro, it actually protects it from further deterioration. So they use a lot of bronze materials in naval hardware
Okay.
because of its durability and its capabilities to withstand harsh elements.
Really?
Yeah.
So naval environment, the bronze outside's getting a little bit of weather, but it's protecting the inside. and
Correct. It
That's
kind
not-
of protects the structural integrity of the entire
How
piece.
how long is a bronze piece
And-
going to last? Is that, we're talking 20 years, 100 years? What?
Hundreds of
Yeah,
years.
hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like Richard mentioned, the live patina is something that a lot of clients really like about the bronze finishes because it continues to change and evolve over time. If you think about the old pennies that were mostly copper and they'd get that really pretty verdigris color on it, just imagine that on an entire light fixture.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a look that's really unique and cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Is where the whole process starts. We use the latest versions of AutoCAD. We use some 3D modeling software. We've been tinkering with some 3D printing. We'll take a look at that a little bit later and get some ideas about how we use that for prototyping hardware and things like that. But
Excellent.
what I wanted to do was kind of walk around the corner. As we go through here, you'll see projects that we've done in the past, and I'll talk a little bit about those as we pass by. We've done lots of big bronze monumental doors, lots of corporate lighting for law offices in Chicago. This was the project that I mentioned, the fountain in the governor's mansion in Annapolis, Maryland. And the interesting thing about that is that the top section was representative of the crops of that area, corn and tobacco. Then the center section was kind of the wildlife from the marshy areas. And then the bottom section was the underwater stuff from the Chesapeake Bay.
It's a really cool fountain.
Yeah, it's and that fountain
So
I
the
think
little
we
frog,
did
the little
in the
frog
late
is down here on the second level by the
Excellent.
80s.
duck. Another one of my favorite projects was the Ritz
And
Carlton over in.
Went
Cumberland.
back to visit. I went back to visit it probably
Very
5 years ago, and being a bronze fountain, it had just created the most beautiful patina.
Yeah.
It was amazing to see how well it had held up over 30 years and just the piece of art that it's become.
Yeah. I imagine with the the weather and the water and all that, you probably get even like variation top to bottom. in
Correct.
it and everything like that.
Yeah,
Make it really cool.
it makes it very unique and just beautiful in my opinion.
I got to rewind a little bit here because this next one's really cool too. We got to look at the
The bottom
pineapples.
section was the underwater stuff from the Chesapeake Bay.
Beautiful design, but we've got to find Waldo in here. I'm sure that there's a
Yeah,
little frog
so the
thing.
little
That was the frog.
That was the
here on the
frog.
second level by the
Excellent.
by the ducks. Another one of my favorite projects was the Ritz-Carlton over in Kapalua, Hawaii. We did a whole series of pineapple lights, and we'll see several examples of that throughout the tour. So there was some of these pedestal lights, there was some wall-mounted lights, and even a multi-head chandelier. So up here is kind of the upstairs conference room where the designers and engineers will get together to review the drawings and put together bids and prices and basically figure out how we're going to do the project. Over here is one of those pineapple lights that I
There it is.
mentioned, so you can kind of see the scale of that.
Yeah, those are pretty big guys, you know, bigger than you.
After the project
Bigger
has been
than you
designed
think.
upstairs,
Big as the table.
we'll send a full set of drawings down here to the pattern shop, and they'll look at all the details of the project and figure out what patterns they need to build, and then they'll use either we've been using a CNC router to kind of expedite the pattern making process. So we'll get this butterboard, and then we'll have a program in the computer that just cuts it all out, and that helps expedite it. And then these guys over here will come and do the final finishing on it. They're making some big gutter systems for a project that we're working on.
At what point does the customer approve the process? So obviously they approve the drawings, right? But somewhere in between there, you've got a drawing that goes into a mold, and a mold goes into a casting, and so on. Like, are there additional customer checkpoints, or are they at some point once the handoff's made, you guys are the quality control?
That's a great question. Thank you. The approvals all happen up front with the drawings as far as production stuff. But then after the things are created, we try to send them finished samples and get approvals for the final colors and the final textures and everything. But once they've signed off on the drawings, we get going full bore on
Okay.
production.
Other factories are making
Do you like
multiple
to stay in
parts of-
constant contact with the clients throughout the project and send them updated photos and, you know, keep them involved as much as possible?
Yeah.
Often there's a lot of product on jobs, and clients will have us make a mock-up, and that will be included, that will be approved. So a single light fixture out of 200, they would like to review,
Oh, yeah.
or a section of a railing, we would do a mock-up so that they could see ultimately what they will have. And that would be part of that sample approval process that's often happens very, very early on a project.
So you've got to tell everybody the story about that big gate that you showed me. That was like this massive gate for some home in California where not only did you build a mock-up, but you like built one that wasn't even used and is still in your shop only so that they could approve it. And it was thousands of dollars
They
just
were
for the
actually
approval part.
large entrance doors, pairs with ornamental grills in them.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was done in plastic, but finished to look like an actual component that the client would get.
Yeah.
But he was so concerned about what the quality was going to be and our capability that he contracted us to make something that he could see what we could do for him.
Yeah.
So that was, you spend 6 months just doing a mock-up, you know, for a client, you know, and then another year to do his actual parts, but he wanted to see what he could have.
Yeah.
So,
Very particular, some discerning clients, I guess.
That's one of our strengths, is being able to provide exactly what the client's looking for. It's something, you know, you can't go buy off the shelf. And if they want to see a sample of it before they move ahead, we're more than happy to do that for them.
Is this a lost art? Because this is art, right? You guys are artists and you're building these beautiful things, trying to meet the customer's expectations. How many other people are doing this out there?
There's not very many companies. In fact, I can't think of one that offers the entire range of services that we do. You know, you can go contract with an architecture firm to design something for you. You could contract with a foundry to cast some parts for you. Then you could go find a powder coat painter or someone to finish it and hire a contractor to install it. But
So
that's
4 different people that don't understand the project, don't know what you want, how it all goes together.
Yeah, that's been one of our goals over the years of the company, is to bring everything in-house so that we have the ability to turn on a dime and to provide exactly what the customers are looking for. and that they can't find anywhere else, like Dave Teague mentioned in the beginning of the video.
Yeah. You guys do amazing things. I mean, we can't show in the video all the cool products and samples that you guys had laying around and in the conference rooms. But,
Since
quite a
we
few.
are in Salt Lake City, some of the local projects that we have been involved in, we did all the light fixtures and railings down at the Grand America Hotel, that 5-star hotel that
Yep.
was built just before the Olympics in 2002. So if you have a chance to go downtown, you could see those lights that have been there for 18, 19 years
Yeah.
and see how beautiful the patinas are developing on those lights.
Yeah, take a visit to the Grand America. Awesome.
The same thing, and having to do, hit a certain throughput or things like that. Do you guys have any type of goals as far as like, what do we need to get done today? Or is it really just, man, we got one shot at this, the quality has to be perfect, take as much time as you need and get it right so that you don't have any issues later on in the process?
Oh, yeah, we have to get it right, but I mean, we're still under time constraints. There's a bid that we need to try to stay within those hours, and because that's really the biggest cost factor is time, more so than materials. And so we try to do it, and as time
As efficiently as
as
possible.
efficiently as possible. And and if we can do it faster than this bid, that's great. And if it takes a little longer, then that's not so great. And hopefully it all averages out in the end, and we're good.
So we have two different parts to our machine department. Over here we have a CNC router that we used for cutting out patterns and helping expedite that process. And then the other part of the machine shop is where they do the really high tolerance detailed hinges and everything that needs to fit exactly like a traditional machine shop. Yeah, so this is the other half of the machine shop where we do the really detailed high tolerance fine machine work for like hinges or hardware. We use some big industrial lathes and mills. And
What are we making here? Are these doorknobs? That's
are-
another
yeah.
20 pounds right there. Everything you guys make is like 20
Everything.
pounds.
That's right, we're considered the real iron.
It's
Man.
true. Your stuff is heavy. Everything I picked up, I'm like, oh, this
Yeah,
is
these are
not,
just some bronze steel
Walmart
probably for a
stuff.
railing
This
part.
is for real.
What I wanted to show was just over here, there's some door hardware. You can see we make all of our own door hardware in here. So each individual
Oh, wow, you're
piece,
creating latches
and
locks.
doors and everything. So we provide the product from beginning to end, and we do make all of our own hardware.
This is a custom lock. Like you're building both sides, and this is latching together the whole mechanism.
Yes.
So you're designing mechanisms.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that is correct. That's
Good.
the type of thing that we do in this part of the shop.
How do you
I was
make
kind of
sure
blown away
that
by that, right? You guys have to be light fixture specialists, art specialists. Then you got to be mechanics, right? You got to figure out the
We do a
mechanical
variety of things, and we're fortunate that we have most of those services in-house.
Is that just like one guy you keep locked in the back and he knows
Well, it
everything?
is
Or
one guy in each corner that makes up the teamwork, but yeah, we're fortunate to have great craftsmen that love what they do.
how's this getting passed down to the next generation so that, at some point, all of us are going somewhere?
Yeah, we're always looking for people with kind of the talent and the aptitude to be able to think outside the box and to visualize how things should go together and make things work.
Are there
A lot
are
of
there young guys?
apprentice type
Yeah.
situations where we bring people into the company. I remember Chad as a kid coming to work for us, sweeping the floor, and then he learned how to sand castings and grind on things and put things together. And he just became so involved and so important to us because he learned all the facets of the work that soon moved up into management where he's helped manage other employees. So
Yeah, I remember my very first job. I think I was 15 years old, and we were building the furniture for the Statue of Liberty, for around the base of the
wow.
Statue of Liberty in New York. And my job was I had to find a flat spot on the shop floor, and I got to grind off the bottom of the legs of the chairs to make sure that they sat flat on the floor.
Because the floor is not level, but the chairs have to
The
feel
chairs
level.
have to feel level.
So chair
exactly.
3 has to be in location 3 all the time.
That's
It's
right. And
Chad customized it.
That's right. I learned that it's much harder to get a 4-legged chair to sit level than a 3-legged chair.
I would believe that. Yeah, absolutely. That 4th leg isn't touching down there.
Yep.
Interesting. So yeah, when your installers go out, you're customizing right there on the job
Yeah.
site. That's crazy. So is there another generation that you're working on right now? That do people come in? At what age are people showing up for this? do you get high school kids in, college age, you know, or is this
We're
something you're
training
actively
some kids
doing?
that are just graduating from
Okay.
school currently. But over the last couple of years, work has been slow and limited, and so we haven't had as many people involved. But again, we see now things are picking up, and again, the workload will pick up, and we'll try to train other help. Out of those employees that we have, almost all of them have been with us over 15 years.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
we try to create an environment where it's like a big family and people enjoy coming to work and they love what they do. And so they take pride in this art that they're creating.
Yeah, I got a sense for that when I was there, that everybody was definitely a family. So,
Yeah, we kind of think of it like Richard said, the art, we kind of think of it like jewelry on the buildings. It's kind of the small details that really make buildings stand out and highlight their architecture.
yeah, you're right. It is those little things that set one building apart from another.
Sure.
Just feels better.
Yeah.
If you have a little
Yeah,
bit
it makes you feel better. Good architecture makes you feel better.
really does.
Is there, I mean, what's the R&D process like for something like that? Do you have kind of go-to mechanisms that you design once and you know work? Or are you having to create new ones for every job? Like,
We have a couple of more standard designs that will fit most of the doors that we work on. But every once in a while they'll want something different and unique.
what are the quality checks in here? How do they know if they've done the job right? I mean, is it just plug the program into the equipment and hope the designer got it right? Or how do they make sure that the quality is right before it leaves to the next step and gets installed in the door? Because I imagine if it gets all the way out to the field and it's installed and something's wrong, then it becomes
Then it
very
becomes a
expensive.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do check everything along the way. On the doors and stuff, as we'll see in the fabrication department, we mock all those up and hang the doors and actually swing them and make sure that they are all working properly.
Here in the shop.
Here in the shop.
No matter what size the door.
No matter
You're
what
hanging
size.
it here.
We'll
Okay.
hang it here and test it out, and then dismantle it to ship it to install.
How do they know if what comes off the machine matches the drawing? Do they have the drawings here? Are they looking at
Yeah,
them?
no, they'll have the drawings here, and then they'll use calipers and micrometers and things to check the tolerances and make sure it's exactly where it needs to be.
Okay. And then as far as safety goes, a lot of big equipment in here, a lot of heavy parts. What sort of training do you do? What sort of safety precautions do you have?
Well, like I said, the average tenure of our employees is about 18 years, so they've kind of worked their way up in the system, I guess, and they've just become familiar with all the safety precautions, safety requirements for the machinery, and we trust them. We trust them to run it. We do have one full-time safety manager
Okay.
that kind of oversees the safety for the entire company, and then we have monthly safety meetings where we review various topics, that need to be addressed.
So this is just milling the top off, so I have a flat surface.
Okay,
And it's going to bore the hole in for that thread.
okay. And once it's done through the process right here, what do you do to make sure that everything happened the way that you thought that it would happen?
So I'll always have a mating part one side or the other for the threads. So this one is, for instance, is only pipe thread for quite a large line that goes out on the job itself. But most everything I will check the interface between the part I'm making and the one that it goes with. So this is putting the hex on the outside.
Perfect.
And this is we've already made a wrench for this hex, so that when we send them out, a lot of times we'll just send a wrench with it. But I thought this would be something good that we could just see what it does.
What kind of maintenance do you do on this machine, or what kind of schedule do you put it on to make sure that it's operating in top condition?
Well, it has its own oiler for everything, so the oiler is always running while the machine is running. And basically you just have to look at the biggest part is you're going to have to keep track of all your collets and your collet holders. They can get worn and then you need to replace them because they won't be accurate. So that's one thing, but we have a guy that comes in and cleans every day and he'll get the machine down. But basically it has its own oiler, and everything I do and I'm watching, I listen for any kind of a problem, a lot of times.
This is a pattern box with a pattern for 2 railing balusters in here. And what they've done is they've got it set up so that the metal would pour in there and flow down through these gates and then take the shape of the entire baluster. And what they'll do is they'll pack the sand in here, and it has that chemical binder so it will harden, and then they'll flip that over and pack the other side, and then they'll have 2 pieces of sand that when they put together, it will create the one round baluster.
So if I'm a team member out here and this is my job is to work on these, and in the process of making something, I learn or I think of a better idea how to do this, or since we may need to do 10 of these, how is it that I can educate or pass on my idea or let somebody else know if I have an improvement in anywhere in the process here?
Yeah, so no, great question, Ryan, thank you. So we have 3 project managers here at Historical Arts and Casting that oversee the projects that we have going throughout the shop. So if I was working out here in the foundry and I was like, oh gosh, I thought of a better way to do this, then I would mention it to my project manager. And they could converse about, hey, that really is a great way to do it, let's make that change. Or, hey, we're doing it this way because it's worked in the past, and we'll try that on the next project. But we really do value the feedback from the employees about the individual processes.
Sounds like there's good collaboration between what happens on the floor and the design and the planning processes.
Yeah, I think that's one of our strong suits is the communication and being able to work together and change things on the fly if necessary. That's what really puts us at the forefront of custom shop, is being able to make those adjustments in stream. Over here to my right, we have our big induction furnace. It's kind of like a giant microwave for metal, where it melts the metal with electricity kind of from the inside out, instead of like a traditional gas furnace, which would melt from the outside in.
Yeah.
It kind of heats from the outside in.
Okay.
And so what they would do is put the metal in the...
So hold on, before we dive into the cool stuff, which is the casting, why is there a front loader moving a whole bunch of stuff around in the background here? What's going on?
That's, we recycled our foundry sand for our molds. And so we try to keep a green environment, and we try to reuse everything that we can. And so that skid steer loader is loading up a device that will refine and break this sand down so that it can run through the machine again.
So if I pour sand in there, it gets hard and makes the mold that I pour the iron or copper into. Every time I pour metal into there, is that sand now ruined and has to be redone?
No.
Or can we do it? How many times can you use it?
You have to remold every part that you're casting new. So that's where the time and
So it is
involvement.
new sand every time.
So it is reconstituted sand is what I would say.
They're reused.
But a mold, some people would think, well, can I pour metal twice into the same
Yeah,
mold?
that's
You
what I-
can't. It
That's what I
has
was
to
hoping.
be,
Yeah.
you have to recreate, and that's where all the labor is involved in our process. Is every piece goes through 10 processes to get one little casting. So when you go from the pattern work to the molding, to the metal cleanup, to the finishing, to the fabrication, there's quite a sequence.
I'm going to
involved.
pay you guys a compliment. I noticed that everybody who worked there seems like a fairly even-keeled, patient person. I imagine if you're the kind of person that likes to just hurry up and get things done really fast, that this is not the job for you. There's a lot of steps involved in this, and you can't rush it.
It's like hiring a painter or a sculptor or anyone that takes pride in their work. They don't rush, and they've learned to take the time it takes to make the quality part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now we can focus on the cool stuff.
there, and then
That's
set...
this big guy right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
They'd put the metal in there, and they'd set the furnace to the proper temperature for the type of metal that they're melting, and then it would bring it up to temperature, and then they'd use the overhead crane and the hoists and things to pick up the crucible and bring it over to the sand mold and pour.
All right, so hold on, silly question. That's made of metal. What prevents the giant microwave from turning everything to liquid?
Well, so the crucibles inside there are ceramic.
Okay.
So, and then the lining you can see inside that metal crucible is ceramic.
Okay.
And that actually helps preserve the heat so that when you're pouring the metal, it doesn't chill off before it gets all the way down into the sand mold.
Got it. Okay.
And then over here on my left, you can see we've used the sand and we recycle it as much as possible. It gets put into a big crusher back in that back room, and then it comes back up through that mixing system, and new chemical binder gets infused into the sand so that they can make the next sand molds.
So even after it's been hardened, it can be recrushed and reused. Is there
Correct.
a limit to how many times that can cycle through? Or?
So you have to add a percentage of new sand every time, because it does get crushed down into what's called fines,
Yep.
which is really powdery like flour, and it takes
Okay.
more chemical binder to bind it together than it's worth. But yes, we try to reuse and recycle as much as possible of the sand, and then on the metal, all the offcuts and everything, we recycle those and remelt those too. So yeah, there's different sizes of crucibles.
And sometimes car parts, apparently. So how come there's a car part in there? How come I got a wheel sitting in my metal bin? What's going on?
That was a cast aluminum wheel. You know, people don't realize that, you know, modern technology has made these parts for your vehicles.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of parts, you know, like engine parts are cast aluminum or cast iron.
So cast just like the stuff you're casting.
And we just reclaim everything that we can. Most of our our material is actually done from virgin ingot or a reclaimed piece of a part, a gate or a riser that we've already cast. And so you mix these components to get an alloy that will do certain things.
All right. So let me ask you this. If I want to create a custom wheel, I could come to you, you design it, you'd cast me a wheel.
We could, but perhaps our business wouldn't be the best because the manganese that these aluminum wheels are done, and that's just a lot of really high-tech tolerances, and most of those are done with injection molding and equipment that's slightly different than this historical
Higher
type of
precision
yeah.
injection molding metal.
Yes, and spin centrifugal spinning wheels with cast material.
Gotcha.
But we can still do incredible things. We could make 4 custom wheels for your car and machine the components that are required. And we've done a lot of custom things for cars, old cars that they can't any longer find the parts
that they can't get. Yeah.
You know, and so we've made those parts for people and remachined them and done what they need. But again, our strong suit is architectural components and not industrial parts, even though we do that.
But there, I noticed in the shop, there are some car enthusiasts in the shop there.
Yep.
One or two folks working on some.
I think
race
most of
cars
our
there.
employees have hobbies that relate to the work that they do, and they use that in their home, you know, life on their off time to recreate things, you know, that they enjoy doing.
Yeah, it looked like they were having a little bit of fun when we were in the factory. I don't think we have that in the video, but some cool stuff being built. If you have questions, if you're on the line and you have questions for these guys, jump in, you know, get on the chat window, or as you know, say, hey, McKinley, we want to ask this question. Jump in there. We'd love to have you guys participate in this and ask any questions that you have about their factory as we go along, about anything, whether it's something they do, how do they manage their team? How do they handle, you know, the ups and downs in their business? You know, any questions you have, it's great to learn from other people's experience. So jump on in the chat there.
You have to have a different crucible for each type of metal that you're melting. Here you can see they've got these sand molds all set up. You can see this white, the white facing sand is really smooth, and the darker brown sand is a coarser sand, like a filler, to just support it.
Just to support the mold.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your yield? In other words, if you have to pour 100 railings today, will you get all 100 right, or do you have rework and scrap?
It's probably the high 90s. We'd like to think it is.
Yeah.
But
you guys track that,
there could be a little bit of rework, and that's where the fabrication guys will look at the castings and say, okay, is it easier to retouch this with welding, or is it easier to cast a new one? So that's one of those quality control things that kind of happens along the way, where they'll pour the metal and get the casting. They'll be like, okay, is this what we want? Can we fix it, or do we need to pour a new one? Did it come out perfectly, just like we anticipated?
Right.
And you can see that the crucible is red hot even through the ceramic.
Yep.
This is when you've got to just be careful with it. And they'll try to do it without spilling any.
Be careful. That's the understatement of the year right there.
How do they know when they reach the fill point?
It will fill up to the tops. You'll see the color start showing up on the end, and then they stop. And then they know that one's full, so then they'll move to the next one. And then they'll just work their way down the line until they run. Hopefully they're able to do all 6 of those. I think that was their plan with the amount. They probably calculated that, but they're trying to do it as quickly and efficiently as possible so that the metal maintains the heat and doesn't chill off.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the cooling process. So now that it's been poured, how do you know how long it needs to sit there before you can take the molds on?
They'll usually let it sit overnight. They'll usually come in the morning and they'll make the sand molds and prep everything, and then they'll usually pour in the afternoon, and then it'll cool off the entire night. And then when they come in the morning, they'll break.
Looks like they missed that 6th one, huh? They got 5, and then they're a little short, I think. Excellent, McKinley. I have a question. So you can jump on the mic and ask the question there, would you? So you got to turn your 4th mic up right there. Beautiful. All right.
There we go.
You guys can't see our DJ McKinley, but she's here.
I'm in the back. So the question is, how many projects do you typically have going on at one time?
So there's usually in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 projects going on at one time through the shop.
Follow-on question, then how long does a typical project take? And I realize it
On
can vary
average,
widely.
most of the projects that we work on take 3 months to 4 months to actually go through this whole process. So it's not usually an overnight thing, because you have the design phase and approval, you have the pattern making, you have the foundry process, and each one of those phases has to be completed in order to go to the next phase. And so as we're working on multiple projects, somebody's got to wait their turn to get into the queue in each one of those departments. And that's why often things, but we're fortunate that we're able to schedule a lot of this so a lot can be happening at the same time.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you for the question. Perfect.
Break away the sand and make sure that it turned out.
So Chad, talk to us about metal recycling then. So you've got lots of projects going on. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, I assume, but then there's extra pieces that are designed to not be part of it. So what's your process for recycling here?
So we keep the different types of metals separated for recycling purposes or remelting them. So we'll have a bin that's just bronze. We'll have a bin that's like yellow bronze. We'll have a bin that's cast iron, a bin that's aluminum. And we'll keep all of those individual metals separate, and then we'll decide if we can remelt them for another portion of a project.
That's just what I was going to ask. Or you recycle it internally.
Yeah, if we can recycle it internally, that's our first and best option. And then if we can't, like the machine shavings from the machine shop where they're just little fines, those we end up sending out to an actual recycling company.
And so is there an in-between? What would tell you, this is a good piece for recycling versus not? Obviously, it's too small, but is there anything that, impurities or anything
if it's a clean piece and a clean casting, then we can recycle it internally. If it's been machined and has like all the machine oil and all those other impurities, then we'll usually send it out for recycling.
Very good.
So this is
Not just bars of gold laying around,
Yeah,
guys. Tell me
those
the truth.
That's a typical bronze ingot. They kind of look like bars of gold, and
Yeah.
they weigh almost as much as bars of gold. But that's what, like Richard said, that was the grade A primary ingot. That's how it comes to us.
Nice.
And that's usually mixed with what they were just talking about, these remnants, which are the gates and risers. And so it'll be 60 or 70% virgin or new ingot with the stuff that's already been heated, because you burn out certain chemicals that make it work the way it needs to work.
Got it.
It was interesting. We worked on the U.S. Capitol Dome in Washington, D.C. We were the foundry that's mentioned in the architect.
All right,
of the
hold
Capitol
on. He's
video.
just dropping names left and right here, guys. You see, these guys are super humble. They won't tell you, but they're like, yeah, one time when we were working on the Statue of Liberty, and that other time we were on the U.S. Capitol. And by the way, so anyway, it's hilarious.
But the architect of the Capitol, they were really interested in making sure they recycled the original material that was used in that cast iron balustrade and on the decorative portions of the dome. So I think that was a good selling point for us, is we are able to remelt and reuse the same material, but create new pieces to replace the ones that have been damaged.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting story to tell too. Say like, this was the original material that was used here, right? And it's still there.
Yeah.
Right. Newer and better, but still there.
Correct.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. Okay,
I can probably think of a couple other names to name.
What haven't you
as we
worked
get-
on?
as we get going?
For a state capitol building. And as you can imagine, each one of these pieces was made, in a casting, and then cut and welded and fabricated and assembled into this light fixture. And that's the head. And then over here, if you come, you can see the detail on the column and the base of the light fixture. That's kind of what the bronze looks like after it's been poured
That's
and
beautiful stuff.
rough cleaned up and then fabricated. So these light
It's
fixtures
really
wired,
rewarding
have
to
glass
see the
installed,
projects as they progress
and
through each
have a
process and to
finished patina
see
applied.
the final.
Give me a rough
final
estimate.
project
What is
come
a massive bronze sculpture like this going to cost me?
This light fixture, I think, is about $40,000 from beginning to end, including the design, pattern work, all the way through the end of the process. It's probably 600 to 800 pounds, maybe close to
Let's find out,
1,000.
Joey. Here.
Maybe
Ryan,
closer to 1,000 with,
There we go.
with the glass and everything.
Yeah.
That's not going anywhere.
Yeah, we don't have to go to the gym. All we have to do is come to work.
Patina on it. How
You
much
guys are going home like, oh yeah,
time has it taken to get
I
to
moved
this
some metal
stage?
today.
We
How much
felt the
time is
burn.
left before the patina and the wiring and it's ready to go for the customer?
So we've probably been involved in this project for about 6 months. We built these light fixtures before, so we actually had the patterns existing. and that gave us kind of a step forward. But getting it into our scheduling and then actually building it, we're probably into it about 6 months, and we probably got about 2 months more. We're waiting on the glass right now. We've made templates for the custom glass and sent those off to the glass company. That's one thing we don't do here is glass. We'll obtain it from a glass manufacturer and make sure that the light fixture is completely done and ready for installation, but we have to get the glass from Mexico.
Very good. So in that 2 months then, we've got the finish, the patina to do, we've got the electrical work to do. Does it go out then in pieces? For example, you know, will it go this piece and this piece, or do you assemble it all, then ship it? What's typical?
This one will probably go out in pieces,
Okay.
like you said. It'll be in more manageable size pieces, and then the electricians at the job site or the general contractor will take the lamp head and set it on there and do the final attachments and hook the wiring up to the main power.
And you said you help with that process sometimes. How often do you get called out to help on the installation end of this?
Actually, it's more often than you think,
Huh.
because our projects seem to be fairly complicated. Like if we're doing a big railing system, that seems to be one where we really encourage the client to have us come out and do the installation. And what we like to do is have the fabricators that have built the railings be the ones that go out on the installation. So if they encounter any problems, they're the ones most familiar with the product, and they can solve the problems on site.
Very good.
If it's aluminum or cast iron, it usually gets painted. And they'll use different primers to make sure that it's the best possible paint for that type of metal. And then if it's bronze, it usually has a patina finish.
Okay.
So, and
What does that mean?
the patina finish is a chemical process where you change the color of the bronze, and you can get browns and greens. And because of the copper in it, if it's an exterior application, it will eventually turn that verdigris color. If you remember the old copper pennies would turn green.
Yep.
Or if you see copper or bronze fountains out and about, they have that neat verdigris where the waters run on them and stuff. So that's one of the unique things about bronze. And they use that because of its durability. They use bronze in a lot of marine applications for boat hardware and things because of its durability. And the patina on the bronze actually helps protect it from further deterioration. Whereas like on ferrous thing, like iron, if it starts rusting, that continues to continues to deteriorate it.
Bronze, it creates a
On bronze,
protective layer,
it kind of creates a protective layer.
Okay, so if you're doing cast iron, you've got to paint it and keep painting it.
Yeah,
there's a
so
maintenance.
cast iron does require a little bit of maintenance. We use a top quality zinc-rich primer as a base coat, and then there's a special painting system that's designed for cast iron. So we end up with about a 25 year paint life, just like an automotive, like a car. You know, after about 25 years out in the weather, your car the paint starts going.
Yep.
So I started my time here sandblasting out in a foot of snow. You know, we all spend our time doing sandblasting. I worked in the paint shop. I worked in the fabrication shop. I learned to weld to some degree of proficiency and got into design work and project management. And now I still do those things, and to all of them to some.
So I've heard this multiple times now. Everybody that worked there has done lots of jobs or all jobs. Is it still that way? It's kind of like you got to know the whole business to be in the family, right? Or, you know.
Well, not necessarily. And we find that some people do great in a certain department, like finishers. But there are always those people that want to learn and do more than what they're doing. And we've always been a company that felt like we want to advance them and let them do what they like doing. And so, again, you have handfuls that have stayed in a department, but there are handfuls that have moved from the very bottom all the way through. And what makes like Chad or Steve Brown that you're just hearing from so valuable is that they've learned everything that there is. And when somebody asks a question, they can answer it, you know, correctly, and they can answer it with confidence that they can recommend something or say we can do a certain thing because they've built those things. They've done them.
Well, and here at UMA, we're always teaching continuous improvement and problem solving. So I imagine somebody with that background, if a problem does come up, you know, he's drafting or whatever. He's not down at the finishing area, but he probably has an idea of.
But again, the advantage of having people like that, they are working with each department.
Right.
When there's a problem arise, they're fully aware of it and maybe suggest things they can do to resolve it. Or when an employee suggests something, take that and then incorporate it in a future project because they knew it helped. It helped become more successful.
Yeah, you're keeping all that knowledge in-house between
Right.
departments. Yeah, there's no silos in your company, right?
Right.
Everybody's working together.
Yes.
And sharing their knowledge. Yeah, that's awesome.
Agree. But more of what I do in the shop now has to do with the CNC programming for our pattern making process, but we use those processes to assist us in other parts of the fabrication as well.
Very cool. Yeah, if you know everything in the shop, then you know what can go wrong, how to avoid it.
I'll never claim to know everything.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's a great team of people, and again, everybody has their part. And typically, we're pretty cohesive and brainstorming through. The answer, can you do this, is never a no. We can do it. Whatever somebody comes to us with, we may not know how yet, but we have enough experience that we know we can figure it out. And
Yeah, you guys are the yes we can guys. You need to redo this massive light post that was built 200 years ago. Absolutely, we can do that, right? Yeah.
And some things you have enough experience under your belt that you know exactly the process. Some things may be left unanswered, but normally, yeah, it's a similar process applied to different projects and different products. And so, you capture the detail with the scanner. That gets brought into the computer where you can manipulate the scan. In this case, I'm going to get rid of some of the area that is around the relief that I'm interested in just by selecting it, kind of like you would select, pixels in a bitmap. And then
less that the computer has to worry about, right?
Exactly.
Speeds up the process.
And then I go back out in here and I go through a process where it actually takes the individual frames of the scan and runs it through a computer algorithm trying to line them up, do a global registration. This is typically when you have multiple scans. So say you have scans on different sides of an object, or if this had a front and a back, I could stitch those together to create a closed object. And then you have some other tools to clean up the scan in case you have reflective surfaces, or sometimes there's dust even. I'll scan and sometimes I'll see a flaw and it's actually a hair that's sitting there that it caught a little bit of that. And so this gives you tools to clean all these up. The benefit, you talked about this being to scale. It is scanning at full scale, but the benefit is now when I have it on the computer, I can change the scale,
So
or I
it's
can
like
change.
a vector file. You could do whatever you want with it. Make it bigger, smaller.
Right, and so I can scale it, but unlike a vector, it also has depth, so I can change the depth as well as the aspect ratio. And then what I do with the scan, right now it's a point cloud of scan data where it's just X, Y, and Z coordinates in space. And so now what I'm doing is using the software to map a surface on top of this that I'll then be able to bring into other software to 3D print or cut with a CNC or model with modeling software. This is usually.
So I want to take you guys on a road show to all the local high schools, because, I've got kids in high school, and manufacturing, you ask people what they want to be when they grow up. Nobody thinks manufacturing unless they're in my house. And I, am constantly trying to convince them how cool manufacturing is. But if you're into computer science, if you're into technology, you guys are using that. You're in the business of doing cast iron, which is thousands of years old, but you're also in the business of using 3D modeling and scanning and
Yeah, you have to try to stay competitive in a world that's moving 100 miles an hour. And we've taken full advantage of some of this technology, the computer-aided design, the CNC machining to create parts, sometimes 5-10 times as quick as we could do them manually, like we have for hundreds of years. And so this technology is great. The neat thing about this, and you speak about kids in high school, they've had the opportunity experience to create a little item. And then at school, they can print that item on a 3D printer.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to watch what you design and build that. We could take that same thing, and once it's printed, we could make a pattern of that and cast that thing. And so we use 3D printers actually to help us in our model making and our pattern shop. But kids that have that ability to use their minds and create things, those are the ones that we're looking for, because they like to create,
Yeah,
and the artistic ability. And so it's interesting how all this technology is actually helping a company doing historical nature of things.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, we're getting close to the end of time here. So if you have any questions, if you're on the line, please type them in the chat window. This is your chance. Just got a few more minutes here. I'm going to zip us down the line here toward the end of the video. I think we've got a nice montage here at the end. Well, here's a 3D printed part. Let's see if we can get some of that in there, and then we'll show you the nice little montage clip at the end here.
Right. You see, you can get.
But here he's talking about using 3D
I mean, look, some
plastic
little
printed
scratch marks aren't there, but
parts
yeah, the
that you
detail
can
on the
cast, and how it allows you to make it
So,
precise,
where
perfectly
this is gained
symmetrical,
some
right? So
efficiency
it's
was,
taking,
is
something
traditionally when
that's
we
been done
made
for
something,
thousands of
especially
years
if it's
and
symmetrical left to
making
right,
it, the
and
art is
you
moving
have,
to a digital
front and
art.
back that are, like book matched. Traditionally, our artist would have to sculpt the whole front of something. Then we would make a hard copy. She would flip it over and then sculpt the whole back of it, because the hand process, things aren't quite symmetrical, and so you have to accommodate that by creating the whole thing. Where when something is created digitally, we're able to do one side of something, maintain the artistic integrity of that artist's touch, and then use the digital process to make it more economical and affordable. So we kind of maintain the integrity of the artwork and also speeding up the process to hopefully make it the bottom line suit our clients.
Make some financial sense.
So Chad, since you go to places, take things apart that were built maybe 100 years ago plus, do you learn from some of the experiences about what someone else did to build this originally? Do you have takeaways from
that's one
the
of the
original craftsmanship?
Yeah, that's one of the fascinating things about being involved in restoration work, is to see how the craftsmen and builders did it 100 years ago. And we do learn from that. And they came up with some pretty ingenious ways of connecting things and building things and measuring, doing layouts and stuff. And we've tried to continue that legacy, but then include as much modern technology as we can to make the process easier, I guess.
So you never look at a piece and say, wow, that clearly came from a 19th century CNC. That probably, that probably doesn't come across.
Oh,
right?
you look at that and you go, gosh, somebody spent a lot of time and was very talented with their hands.
Yeah.
So it gets.
All right. Sorry, just speeding this up.
Its own unique little thing where you can have access
It's going to let me.
to all of the materials for manufacturing, yet in your downtime or the time off from work, you can be in the mountains skiing, you can be hunting and fishing. We have incredible hiking. And
The
really,
question
we
was,
have
why do you do business in Utah?
move from here with all the things that we love.
Well, it's been a good place to work, and there's been a steady path of more interesting work to do, and they've kind of always put it in front of me. I enjoy breaking the problems apart into little bits and working my way through the solution.
All right. Well, Chad and Richard, thank you for sharing your factory with us and taking us on a tour today. It was fantastic. Just really appreciate and respect what you guys do. And thank you for doing business here in Utah and keeping manufacturing alive. It's fantastic.
Thanks very much
Thank
for
you.
the opportunity. When I see things that this organization is doing, making people aware of companies in Utah, it's a great thing. And really, we can almost get anything in Utah.
You really can.
And, a lot of people say, well, where can I buy that? Or where can I get this? Utah is a great place to live and work.
People are blown away. I mean, when you look at the Capitol buildings and you see, wow, that stuff's made in Utah. We make trains in Utah. I mean, we have Stoddard out there making like full on locomotives and passenger cars and just train. We make cars, we make, glasses, clothing, stuff that people think is long ago been outsourced or forgotten.
Yes.
And you guys are doing it, which is really cool.
Yes, thank you very much, Cedro.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys again. And for everybody out there, thanks for joining us for another UMA virtual factory tour. We do one a month. So watch your email. And if you get an email saying to come to one of these, share it with your friends. We'd love to have more people join us again next month. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.